Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am OmnusI here in my lair. And today I've got kind of an interesting topic video, I think. You see, we are living in a magical age. One that we've never seen before. One with many, many implications that resound almost without even people thinking about them these days. For one thing, as I've said before, golden age of gaming. People can self-publish. People can go to a forum like the Dungeon Masters Guild, and they can get their stuff out in front of people. So anybody can be a writer or game designer who wants to be. It's not gatekept by a couple of publishers or a couple of owners. It is for everybody. Which is both cool and terrifying, quite honestly. There are some games out there that aren't very good, would never have made it if there was somebody standing overlooking the scene and looked at the game and go, well, maybe not. Maybe throw it in for some editing, maybe we can polish it. No, stuff comes straight out. That doesn't mean overall that the game industry is cheapened or worsened, because most of those games don't get the exposure, really, that the good ones generally do. I mean, look at companies like Free League. They've had a number of IPs that have been really good. Aliens, now they've got Twilight 2000. So they have some cachet in the gaming industry. And their system is pretty spot on. A lot of people really like their stuff. And from what I've seen, it has an ease of use, it's highly narrative, and it's got enough crunch to replicate a good cinematic story. Aces in my book. From what I've seen from other companies, Fantasy Flight Games has their own takes and reinventions. I mean, they went classical with, in my experience, the Warhammer 40,000 games they did, where it was based on percentile dice rolls. Old as time. Works just fine. They put a nice polish on it. The game system worked just fine. I ran several games with it. It was good. Then they go off and they decide, we're going to make a game that uses our own proprietary dice. And they made, of course, starting out with the Star Wars role-playing game that they did, be it, Edge of the Empire or, any of those. And then they, of course, made Genesis so that, you could have your fantasy and use those kind of narrative dice too, which was brilliant. Good idea. Good on them for doing that. A lot of people really like Genesis. A lot of people I know of really did like the Star Wars games. Modifius with their 2D20 system. Interesting ideas, and I think it could make for really fun, energizing gameplay. There's a lot of stuff out there right now. And of course you still have your monolithic entity for the people who like your Dungeons and Dragons. Not going anywhere. Still can play that all you want too. So you've got that. Plus you have more people in the hobby than ever before. When it started out, it was such a small little niche that only appealed to a small number of people because the barrier to entry was pretty large. Now it's in all different kinds of media form, from movies to solo novels to a role-playing game that appeals to a wide variety of people. So yeah, the gaming hobby is in a great place. Another thing that's really, really popular and has helped to extend the popularity of role-playing games is, before, if you wanted to experience role-playing games, you had to kind of be a participant. You had to find a group. You had to join and try it to find out if you liked it. There was no movies of people playing role-playing games, with a few that had some small bites of people playing, and mostly those didn't really capture the intricacies of role-playing games, because that really wasn't what the movie was about. Sure, you could watch the opening to E.T. and watch Elliot's brother playing Dungeons and Dragons with some friends, but that didn't show the whole picture. You could go watch Mazes and Monsters, and there was definitely some interesting things that showed some engaging ideas, but they quickly spun out into LARPing, which for some reason was shown as kind of a bad thing. It was kind of lame, but there's some neat elements to it. And then ultimately it was a psychological movie about a downward spiral for a person who had some really deep issues. Less about the role-playing. The role-playing was just a vehicle to get you there. But now, oh no. Now anybody who's interested in role-playing games can go and they can look up a streamed game or a live play game with people who are actually playing. And those come in different forms and different flavors. There are people who stream their games that they play at their tables. You have, of course, games that people play at conventions where they're streamed. And you have, of course, the celebrity games where you can go and you can watch people who themselves have a cult of personality formed and fans that want to see these people, this combination of players get together, or maybe a person or two that they really are a fan of. Some of those tend to really high production values. Now, you can do this with, like, Zoom. If everybody's got a camera, you can do Zoom and everybody will see everybody's face, and the format is right there and it's on your computer screen, so recording it is relatively easy. I mean, Zoom has its own recording option. You could use another format like, the XSplit broadcaster, which I use. So anybody can make one of these streams. And I've had a few people go, Rob, you're more of a performance guy. You're not somebody who just sits there and diligently parses over the rules. You're more about making a show of it and bring people in to kind of enjoy the experience. You should stream your games. To which I have always said, not really my thing. Now, I, realize that, some people, if they have expressed that I should do it, maybe had an interest in seeing some of my games. Maybe some of them thought, well, if he makes videos about, things that he notes in games and stuff, if you could see the games that he runs, it's self-narration. You can actually see how he employs these different strategies and things. And to an extent, that is kind of true. I'm not saying that watching anybody playing is a perfect how to do this, but you can learn an awful lot from a game system by watching people play it. And now that these streams exist, they can really get you excited on playing certain games. I, for one, am very excited to play Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory from watching the Warhams podcast, which is very minimal. It's got a very nice overlay on Roll20. You cannot see the participants because they're voice actors. You can see their icons chatting away, but that's it. So they've removed that element where you are, somebody's pretty and you like watching them play the games. They've built interesting characters. They do really good jobs with voices, voice actors, and emoting through their voices. But I love, the elements that appeal to me out of this group, which is it's in a universe that I'm interested in, the text-to-speech device universe, and I've proselytized for Warhammer 40,000 if the Emperor had a text-to-speech device. The language isn't appropriate for children, but it's hilarious, and I honestly do think it may have influenced Games Workshops to advance their storyline a bit, since it was clear that the community was ready for people to move on. But here's the thing. I do have a ready-made answer for people who have said, well, why don't you stream? It's so easy. You even have a camera. If you just fixed it, or if I fixed it on the other side so people could see me doing all the things that I do, I could stream my games. I could put it off to one side so you could see my players. I could get a phone or two and use those to record elements too, so I can switch between. If I got a couple more cameras like the one I've got, it gets to be a bit more, involved and, a little bit more expensive. But honestly, if I could get this camera that I'm using 2 times over, which right now, considering this is a 7-year-old camera, I would say, but I still think it does excellently in terms of quality. If I could get 2 more for what I paid for this one, I would do it in a heartbeat. But here's the thing. Okay, I have number one. I have an instant, easy, ready-made answer, but there's actually a few. Number one, we play in a basement. If I record it, it's only ever going to be in a basement. The acoustics aren't perfect. Okay, some of those cameras in different places won't have the same audio quality because there's open space on one end bad echoes, janky things. If you see the whole space, you'll notice there's washing machines over there, which are kind of ugly. I'm not going to make this an entire set of a room every time I play and run a game. Might I do it once or twice? That wouldn't be so bad. But, you know, like my gaming library over there is fine as a backdrop for the people who are sitting on this side. That's fine. I mean, I have to clean it up a little bit. It's a little cluttery sometimes, but okay, fine. But the space is not made for camera. Let's just put it that way. I can control my soundstage here pretty well, but overall, I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed about the space. It's fine for having friends over and playing, but if, you know, say somebody was going to pay for the experience of playing at my table, like, as ludicrous as that sounds, I would want to give them a better experience than just playing here in my basement. So, there's a certain amount of humility that goes into that. But that's relatively minor. There's also the fact that sometimes circumstances aren't perfect. I couldn't... If I'm going to show on camera, I would want to show off, which means I would want to use more of my 3D elements and things like that. That's not always possible or practical given my schedule, but I would want to. So, you know, maybe that might make me a little bit better game master in that way. But here comes the big one, okay? Whenever you put a camera or a microphone in front of a person, they're no longer playing a game. They are playing as themselves playing a game, frequently where they are playing as someone else. Let me explain. If you know that you are being recorded, even if you consciously try to suppress this experience, almost everybody in the world is going to react the same way. They will be trying to portray themselves in a different way. Not as they themselves are, but as they wish to be perceived. A lot of the spurious kind of humor or comments that a person might make, they subconsciously might suppress some of what makes them unique and some of those unique experiences because they want to come off in their best light. Natural human instinct. You generally try not to make the kind of faux pas that might end up on camera, might end up in a recorded video, might end up on a podcast of some sort. Now, for most people, they're fine with doing that. I didn't make assumptions that my players would be okay with that, personally. I always prefer to respect the rights of everybody at the table, and if there's anybody who doesn't want to be recorded, that kiboshes the whole thing as far as I'm concerned. Now, after I broached the subject and told everybody about this, I actually had members of my group who said, no, it's okay, we wouldn't mind. And I think that pretty roundly went across the whole group. They said they didn't mind. To the point that I have a group that I could probably get unanimous consent. That would then require me to give consent. And I don't know that I look forward to people changing to the point where they're playing as themselves, playing a game. You may not think that's that big of a deal. To me, the authenticity of the game is at stake, however. To me, I want people to be able to relax and get into character. And if they think that whatever they say and do could have lasting implications, not just in the course of the game, because, you have to sometimes have setbacks in a game. Sometimes you need to make a miscue, and that becomes something that's a talking point for months to come. Hey, remember when you said that? That kind of thing. And I think that's fine as part of an organic part of a group. I think that's the bonding glue that holds all the pieces together, are the shared experiences. But what if they're no longer truly your experiences? I know myself, if I go in front of a camera, it's not me. It's not Rob speaking, first of all. OmnusI is not Rob. Rob is not OmnusI. OmnusI is a reflection of the characteristics of Rob. But I try to compose myself differently. I try to refrain from personal opinion. I try to, portray a fair and measured approach to whatever subject I'm talking about. And that is deliberate. It's not by accident, it's by design that I'm trying to reach for objectivity with this character. As I am OmnusI, I am an equal voice in all measures of perspection. See, I can cut this out. As I am OmnusI, I strive for that objectivity. I strive for being able to bring my perspective to bear in a variety of ways to give the viewer a more measured look into things that they might not get from another source. So, I don't like the idea of streaming and running a streamed game. On principle. In terms of practicality, however, it would be pretty easy. Just saying. Especially if I'm willing to, for instance, say if I were willing to, for instance, say put the camera at one of the oblique angles. So it would see me and part of the room. And then maybe I'd alternate it the next time. Would that be good? Would that be something that people would be interested in even seeing? Would it be something that would have merit in preserving? Maybe. Maybe. I certainly wouldn't mind, sometimes showing off what I can do. And as I said, some people have actually said I should do it. I think even far more useful would be an over-my-shoulder shot so I can show what I do as I run games. Obviously, that's a little harder for me to do while I've got, players who will watch my own videos and find out my tricks and tips and things like that. That would mean I'd have to work harder on my processes and change my style a little bit. I'd have to make it more educational, more out there for usefulness, for people to pick up on and get anything out of. Changing the way that I do things, ultimately, which is exactly what I would hope to avoid. So, those are my thoughts on it. Those are the arguments why I shouldn't. Now, obviously, whenever I'm here in front of people, it's a performance anyhow. I'm performing for those people who are in front of me, the players. My beloved players who come to my table and let me entertain them every week. It's great. When it's an element of trust that they give me, that I'm going to give them a good show. They come here in good spirits, usually, and are willing to put in some effort in role-playing themselves, which is awesome. Love it. It's one of my favorite days of the week, clearly. But do I want to put a camera and insert a camera into all of this? I don't know. I really don't. Now, obviously, the plus side's this. Number one, who knows? Maybe we could get a little bit of a following. Maybe people would really like to hear the ongoing stories. And I have a lot of games out there that I know don't get any coverage. I mean, it would be kind of cool to be doing the only Let's Play of Millennium's End, for instance. So if anybody's interested in that game, I could look for it here. It might be kind of cool in its own way to, narrate by displaying a game, some of these oddball ones that I have. And maybe showing how some of these games might be run in ways that other people have kind of tainted the pool on. Like, I could run a fairly entertaining game of 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, for instance, showing its strengths and kind of masking some of its weaknesses. It could be done. I'm pretty sure I could do it if I wanted to, if I could get the group to agree. And honestly, by muting any kind of long-term damage, my wife still blames that one for breaking up the girls group for 4th edition. But more to the point, could I do it? I don't think there's all that many people who are running 4th edition games streaming and showing them off. Well, I could. But here's really what it comes down to is I don't know that the audience is worth the effort. Do you? And this is what it comes down to always. Do you think that watching streaming games, another option for watching streaming games, would you like to see my game run? Would you like to see my game before, whoever? And I guess too, I'm going to be sharing this with my gaming groups. Would you like to be in such a video? I may have asked that question before, but it kind of becomes a bit more pertinent now because you could be in it if this were to become a thing. I have the potential. I have good enough players to make this interesting. But they would have to really work, honestly, to not be sucked up in you're here to present something before everybody. You're here still just to play the game, to enjoy yourself. And if this is going to be a barrier, then obviously I wouldn't want you to do that. I wouldn't want to do that to your enjoyment of the game. It's far more important for me that everybody enjoys the game. So, those are my thoughts. Also, just to be fair, if I ever did do something like that, I know some games really do put a lot of effort into the pageantry, the staging of it. I'm not. I would be presenting it as we run it down here in the basement for all of its warts. I have some things that I can do for backdrops and things like that, but, quite honestly, it's my own little cluttered space, my safe haven away from the rest of the world. And I do invite you into it, to a certain extent, what I can control around me. Sometimes. Sometimes what I can't. But, would that be something anybody would be interested in? It really comes down to feedback and what I hear. If there are people who are keenly interested in hearing how a game runs. Now, one of my groups does a variety of games, too. So it wouldn't be locked into a long campaign. The first one we would do would be a trial anyhow, so I'd be running a new game with a group. But would it be a very long period one? It really depends. The next long-term game I intend to run is The Darkest Dream. It's a 5th edition D&D game made by GUI Cube, my friends at GUI Cube. And would I like to stream it? It would be cool. It'd certainly be cool to show off some of the neat stuff they pack in their adventure. Would that be interesting for you? Would you like to see it? There are other groups that do stream this game, so to a certain extent, risk saturation a little bit. But I'm sure that my audience isn't the same as theirs. But it depends on if I hear anything about it. That's a large part of it. And if I have even one player in a group that says they don't want to be involved in the stream, then it's not going to happen. So, anyhow, those are my thoughts. That's why I don't stream. That's the thing, the carrot that hangs out that I might. But it's up to you. Ball is in your court, people. If you watch this and you thought, that'd be really cool, comment. Use your voice. You got one. Everyone's got one. Thumbs up would be nice. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe. Cool. But comment. Say, yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, I think you do a great job. Or, nah, you don't need to. Wouldn't do anything for me. Like, my personal view, I don't watch other people play except for, as I said, Warhams, because they're, again, voice actors, and they do a really good job of telling a story in a world that I'm deeply involved in. But I don't watch things like Critical Role. I don't watch all of these. I know there's a ton of them, but I just don't. I'd much rather be a part of the action myself and be in on the in-humor and everything. But I know some of them are extremely talented and have large followings. So I'd be willing to try if that's what the people want. If that's what you want to see, we could make something happen. So, until next time, though, I am OmnusI. Thank you for joining me here in my lair. Prepare for more videos to come forward, especially as I get closer and closer to fulfilling obligations for my writing career. So, thank you very much. Until next time, farewell.